Welcome to the Genetic Evolution as we look at the future of the mighty hemp seed. Genetics are vital to the future of hemp. We know as farmers, corn, soybeans, wheat, we've seen the genetic progress in those crops, and that progress continues in hemp. However, it's somewhat new. There's still gaps to fill, and we have to learn many things. We're just scratching the surface of over 30,000 uses for hemp. So in this session, we're going to drop the veil and look in the lab and see what are some of those obstacles that still prevent us from having the best hemp crop possible. My guest is Greg Matthews, and Greg is the lab director here at High Grade Hemp Seed. Greg, thanks for joining me. Why don't we start with this? Tell me a little bit about where we currently sit with genetics in the hemp industry.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about a subject that I personally am incredibly passionate about. Currently, it seems that in the hemp industry, we just had federal legalization, and so there's a lot of interest. For me, at least, it seems that this time is one of the most exciting times that we'll probably ever have in hemp. There's a plethora of new companies popping up, a huge amount of interest flowing into the industry, and along with that, we have good actors, bad actors, academics, people that have been in the industry for a long time, people rushing in, and it seems to me like in America, at least, we are really focusing on this very high resinous hemp varieties that have big flowers that are producing a lot of cannabinoids, a lot of terpenes, in contrast to another region like Europe where they're concentrating more on the fiber, more on the seed. Here in America, we are all about the flowers, the big ones that are just dripping with resin. And there's, as I mentioned, a lot of companies popping up, and it's pretty interesting where a company will just start, they'll be about 1 year old, and they'll have 10 different seed offerings. And you kind of think to yourself, well, have these guys really taken the time to properly produce their genetics in a way that's going to be beneficial for farmers or not? Here at High Grade, we are one of the original seed companies for hemp in America. And we've been doing the work, and we're very happy to see that our genetics, cherry wine, berry blossom, are very foundational to the industry. So we see like cherry Oregon, mountain cherry, Montana cherry, things like that. Well, we're the progenitors of a lot of the genetics that are present on the market today, and I'm very proud and happy to say that.
So there's a lot to unpack in what you're just saying here, because this industry is fairly new, and we didn't have some of these genetics until a couple of years ago, in which hemp became more popular, of course, to be able to grow. So where are the gaps right now, do you feel? Is it just we need more time to work on the genetics like you're doing? What are the big challenges you see as an industry?
Thank you for that question. Just to think about it a little bit, where at the beginning of any sort of industry, things are very scattered. There's not really a unified front on this. There's individual pockets. There's academics working on it. There's industry people working on it. People in their basement are producing seeds. And there's a lot of different crosses being made, and not a whole lot of registering the seed, doing field trials, making sure that the seed genetics are going to be doing what people say they are. So just a hypothetical situation, a company pops up, we sell them seed, the very next year, they're selling their own line of seed where they're producing it using our genetics, and it kind of makes me think to myself, have they taken the time to properly run field trials, test their genetics, make sure that the feminization rate is very high, the germination rate is very high, and because of the cannabis plant's interesting place in our culture, it's attracted a lot of different people that are maybe they don't have a degree in plant breeding, and they just think that, oh, I can take a male plant and a female plant and then sell the seed and make a whole bunch of money. And here at High Grade, we kind of think about things a little bit differently. Let's actually have an in-house testing lab. Let's send our seeds off to a seed testing company that's going to make sure the germination rate is really high, and make sure that our customers, our farmers, will be able to have a large amount of success.
Well, you mentioned you're doing things different at High Grade, and that's good, that's important, and you have a background in this. I know you've been at universities in Texas and Cal Berkeley and labs in Seattle and so forth, so you have the background. So explain what goes into the process here at High Grade Seed, hemp seed, that you do that perhaps others don't, because that's really important in this industry right now.
Well, one thing I could speak about, obviously, I can't tell you all of our secret sauce. We have a lot of interesting projects in the pipeline, a lot of R&D gets involved in every single one of our projects. So I can't really divulge every single detail, but needless to say, we are using modern agronomic techniques where we're doing homogeneity studies, we are testing, we don't release every single cross that we do. We also, I think personally, what I've seen just from working with our R&D department, it seems to me that we have access to a wider range of genetics than many other farmers, because since we've been in the industry for so long, we've made so many contacts, we're not just looking at the same pool of genetics that every other company is looking at, because we're not just looking at these regular type 3 resinous CBD producing plants. We're able to look a little bit more beyond that so that we can bring in healthier genetics, in a sense.
You know, in the open, I mentioned about traditional crops. When you think corn, soybeans, wheat, and so forth, we have years and years of research behind those. So where we stand now, are there huge gaps to make up, and how quick do you make up that time? I'm guessing that's part of what you're trying to do in this lab here.
Exactly. One analogy I would kind of like to use is think about like an automobile, a car, right? A couple years ago, the miles per gallon that you could get was at a certain level, right? And nowadays, the miles per gallon is a lot better. You know, we got Teslas and everything like that. But people were still buying cars, you know, when the miles per gallon weren't that high, right? So the industry is progressing. We're gonna get better every year, but it's not like we're going to not sell seed right now, even though next year's seed is probably going to be better. And so there's a huge amount of technology that's being brought into play in this industry. High Grade I'm very grateful to be working at High Grade because they took the initiative to invest into their research and development stage of their company instead of just focusing on marketing and things like that. And so we were able to build out this lab that we're in and actually take a little look under the hood, so to speak, to look at not just the genetics, but the metabolomics and actually see what the plant is producing.
I think as farmers, we know seed, it all starts with that seed. And in this industry, there have been a lot of variables. So high-grade hemp seed, the name says that. So how are you ensuring that that is high-grade seed that is going to those farmers? Because that's critical. If they don't have the right seed at the beginning, then nothing else is going to follow that's going to be very good.
Yeah. I can't speak too much about that because I'm kind of stuck in the laboratory. I'm really focusing on the science side of things, but I do know that we hired a real hotshot compliance manager who's helping us to take really good strong track of like our seed lots. So I won't name names, but there's some companies where they just send you basically like a Ziploc bag with a Sharpie scrawled on it or something like that. And we're implementing a pretty rigorous barcoding and seed lot tracking and testing and all the sorts of things that make sure that the seed that you buy is the seed that we tell you that it is.
You know, in crops, again, these traditional crops, we think about drought tolerance and perhaps pest control, those types of things that go into genetics. Are you working on similar things like that in hemp? Are there certain areas that you feel like are more important right now in the industry?
Absolutely. We have a lot of projects in our R&D pipeline, which I can't go into too many details about again. Sorry about that. But you know, for a long time, we've really been focused on producing a huge amount of resin in a short amount of time because for right now, the customers, there's a huge demand for CBD products. They want these cannabinoid-based lotions, things like that. And so, you know, this is America. We count out to the customer, right? If they want high CBD varieties, we're producing high CBD varieties. As the industry evolves, so too is high grade going to evolve along with it. Because really, the main goal for high grade hemp seed is we really think that the hemp plant can help. It can save the world, so to speak. And so, as the industry evolves, people are interested in other things beyond just CBD. We plan to evolve along with that industry also. So if we're able to produce seeds that people want, that's our goal here. So it really depends, right? Because farmers are farming our seeds in many different regions and often in many different styles, we kind of have been painting with a broader brush, so to speak. So we're hoping that our varieties are going to work in many different places instead of focusing on like, oh, this one is really good for drought tolerance. But like I said, we do have those projects in the pipeline.
Things are always changing, but where do you see the future of genetics in the industry heading? Because you're here on the forefront of it.
Absolutely. So, this is 2020, and I'm very fortunate to be on the forefront of plant technology, right? A couple years ago, we didn't even really know what DNA was, right? With corn, we just kind of had to weigh it, smell it, rub it with our fingers, and that was kind of the only sort of metric we could look at. Now, in 2020, I just sent off a bunch of samples that we're going to do microarray single nucleotide polymorphism chips. And it's 90,000 different genes, and I'm going to be looking at all of those. And so as the industry evolves, we're taking advantage of the technology that has evolved alongside as well.
You sound like you're pretty excited about where this is heading. It's kind of like a big playing field here that we've just begun to scratch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For many farmers, we plant a seed and we never know what goes behind it, but we're here in the lab. I'd be interested, what would you want farmers to know that many times we don't know? Because you're here in the lab and in a sense you're working for farmers, but we never get to see the person back here working on these genetics.
What would I want the farmers to know? Excellent question. I'll just let them know that there is a ton of passion that goes into this. Everyone that I work with here is very much committed to let's make the hemp plant the plant that's going to help save the planet. It grows really fast. It grows in a variety of different climates, soils. They call it weed for a reason. Sometimes it grows so fast we have to chop them down to about half their height, and it's a vigorous plant. And growing from seed also, you're going to have a really healthy, vigorous plant.
So Greg, in this industry, you see some companies that have a new hybrid, it seems like all the time. And granted, we want new technology, but what goes behind putting these together? Because that's a process and you don't want to be too quick in a sense, and then you don't have the science behind it.
Yeah, thank you for your question on that. And it sort of brings up an idea that I want to talk about a little bit, in that the industry right now is, since it's so new, since it's so much in its infancy, there's a lot of interest in so-called the flavor of the month. And so companies are feeling pressure to release new seed lines, on a monthly basis. And they come up with ridiculous names, purple pineapple, whatever. And here at High Grade, we do want to sell a lot of seed, but we don't really care so much about the fame. We would be more interested in doing long-term breeding projects where we're inbreeding our parental lines to create a homogeneous genetic background, and then crossing two inbred hybrids to create a vigorous hybrid vigor plant. When you take like a hybrid and you cross it to another hybrid, in that case, there's often chance for recessive genes to show up in the next generation. And so we really try to avoid that, because then you don't have a nice even crop, right? You have some plants that are growing this big, some plants that are growing this big, some plants where the flowers are being produced in August, some plants where they don't even start flowering until October. And so for us here, it's all about creating a more homogeneous seed lot, using parental lines to create hybrid seed, instead of just taking a hybrid and crossing it to another hybrid.
I would think that would be where the industry is headed. Would that be right? Because that's what we're familiar with other crops. Is that where we're going?
Absolutely. And it's a process that takes time, right? And so when I see these other companies who are having very short-term success, where just releasing a new hybrid every month, and then some people are interested in novelty and unique things, and they think, well, what's the flavor of the month? What's the consumer going to want? But really, we're focused on what's going to be a proven genetic that is stable and is going to succeed.
When you think about genetics, we mentioned, CBD is the main thing we focus on now, but there's over 30,000 uses. So what then is driving the genetics? Is it always that end use, and are you trying to track them what the consumer wants, and that works backwards into what you're going to do with genetics?
Absolutely. So we kind of think about the end goal in mind, right? It doesn't really help anybody if you grow a whole bunch of hemp plants and then, well, nobody wants them, right? You just you till your field over, and I mean that's good for carbon sequestration, right? As the earth heats up, we're going to see. But you want more than that, right? So we do focus with the end goal in mind. You know, just this year or last year, I suppose, we found that there was interest in CBG in addition to CBD. And so that led us to collaborate with another company to bring some CBG genetics, our Matterhorn seed, to our customers here in America. And I can't reveal too much, but there are more cannabinoids besides just CBD and CBG. You know, they get a whole alphabet soup of them, CBDV, CBNA, all kinds of interesting stuff. And it's pretty fascinating time to be in this industry.
To continue to help those genetics evolve then, are you always out there in the field then trying to gather data as well? I'm sure the company is doing that, and those results come back here to the lab to help you, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, like I might have said, this is basically my dream job, because even though right now I'm in the lab, I'm wearing the coat, I do spend a lot of my time going into the field, going into our R&D facility, breeding facilities, and I actually get to touch the plant. I have a plant touching job, which is really just a dream come true for me, because I'm not only in the sterile environment with the tubes and the pipettes, I actually get to dig my hands into the soil, and so it's just fascinating.
Well, it's not only something you love, but you have to be out here in the forefront of scientists looking at this crop. I mean, it's totally new.
Yeah. I mean, I really do love academia, but I like to be involved in it, right? Like, I don't just like to stay in the lab like some college professor and have other people bring me samples and things like that. Like, I like to be out there and smelling the flowers and taking notes, doing data and things like that. Yeah, it's great.
So where we stand right now, is hemp ready for big ag today?
I would say absolutely it is. Just to go back to the car analogy, we're not quite at the horse and buggy stage, but we're not quite at the Tesla stage yet either. I would say maybe we're about a mid-range Toyota Corolla stage, where, you know, our plants, our seeds, our genetics, they will go the distance, and things are only going to keep on getting better from here.
So for folks that are looking into this, why should they be looking at high-grade hemp seed? What is it that you're doing that can help them, in a sense, no matter how big a farm they have, but certainly in big ag as well?
Yeah, excellent question. So like I might have mentioned a couple times, we got a lot of these seed companies popping up, and it's like established 2019, and you contact them and you say, hey, I need to fill an order, I got 1 million acres. And they say, well, we don't have that much seed, right? High grade, we've been around for many, many years, and we've really established our production values and our throughput, our pipeline, to where we are able to fulfill our orders like that, and we are able to have consistent seed and trackable seed lots.
Do you think anything changes when you look at genetics versus big ag and smaller farmers, or are the genetics pretty much the same no matter what market we're going to move into?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. I'm not really 100% sure about that. Obviously, with some of the smaller growers, they kind of are focusing on a more boutique strains where they kind of are smelling them and they're just going off of their sense where, oh, this is like an apricot smell, but maybe they're not focusing so much on the yield, the cannabinoids, the drought resistance, the pest resistance, and things like that. And they might only produce a 10,000 seed lot or something like that. What we're looking at more is, let's get a plant that's really good, really vigorous, cherry wine, berry blossom, that's gonna hit every single time, and you're gonna plant that seed, you're gonna have a nice big plant, you're gonna be able to harvest it, and you're gonna be able to sell it. And every single plant's gonna be like that.
You mentioned those varieties a couple of times. I should have you mention, though, what do those varieties do well? Because they've been winners for you, so what is it that they're doing well in the market?
Well, one thing that's huge is brand recognition. So cherry wine, I think somebody was telling me that it's basically the Kleenex of hemp. So, you know, you reach for a tissue, that's a Kleenex. You reach for a hemp seed, that's cherry wine. It's very reliable, very stable, grows very vigorously, excellent ratio of CBD to THC, you know, incredibly low THC values, so you're gonna be able to grow it. and produce the large flowers that you want. And I'll even say it's not bad to smoke either. It's got a nice terpene profile, same with the berry blossom as well. Nice aroma, and I like it a lot.
Thank you, Greg. Really interesting about all the genetics going into hemp production today. And be sure to stick with us for our next session, which is going to be the right tools as we explore the nuts and bolts of hemp production. Is the equipment ready for Big Ag today?